everyone, Jan here with another Excel VBA video. In the previous video we have learned about do until loop and the offset function, and we have constructed the loop so it would populate the value in an active cell K11 to all these cells here that we have specified. So when I run the macro now, this is the result. So the macro says basically to the Excel, from this active cell populate its value to all these cells. If you are interested on how this loop was exactly constructed and the details about offset function, please click on the link to see the previous video. At the end of the previous video I promised you to basically show you how what we learned so far can be used in practice. So I have a table here with the invoice numbers, dates, company names, products, net sales and costs. And let's say we want to calculate the profit for each invoice. So how do we do it with what we have so far learned? Well, we're gonna utilize for next loop, and we're gonna utilize offset function to calculate these values here from the active cell, and we're gonna have to utilize one more loop which I haven't told you about yet, but you will see soon enough. So what we need to do first we have to turn on the autofilter on the columns, which is done by pressing Ctrl, Shift and L, or you can just go to data and click filter here, doesn't really matter. And then we are going to sort the invoice numbers from smallest to largest, but it was already sorted, so this is just in case you have unsorted numbers in the first column. Secondly, we need to extract. You can see that there are duplications for the invoice numbers sometimes. Sometimes there's just one value, sometimes there are duplicate values. So second thing we need to do before we start any coding, we need to extract the unique values from column A. And this is most easily done by using this advanced filter. I have it here on the quick access, but if you don't have it on the quick access, you can go to data and here on the advanced, and if you right click on it and you don't have it yet in the access, this option will be available for you, and if you click it, it will move to quick access. So we click this advanced filter and we are presented with a dialog window, and we want to copy to another location only unique values from certain range. So list the range is in this selection bar, so we click here. We don't want all the table as the range, we just want the column A. So we click on cell A1 and we hold Ctrl, Shift and down arrow to highlight all the rows in cell 1 as our range. We press enter, and here in this selection bar we choose where we will copy the unique values. So we click here, we will copy them in H1, press enter and press enter again, and you can see that in column A there is this many unique values. So right now we will loop with each of the unique value we have in this column. We will loop through the column A, find out how many times the unique value appears in the column A and count it. And when we count it, we use offset function to calculate the profit for that invoice number, which is net sales minus the cost, and we will put the profit value into the column G. If there's just one invoice number, we will put the value in the same row. If there's a range of invoice numbers, then we will put the value in the first row of that range. Okay, so we are prepared and we're good to go. So we go back to the Visual Basic Editor, and this sheet, it's called Lots of Data, and in this module I've already prepared the code, because this is let's say a little bit more elaborate or complicated procedure. So trying to work it out directly when recording the video, it would be boring with a lot of pauses, and basically we wouldn't get anywhere. So I already prepared it beforehand, and I will explain to you how the code works. So before we do that, we just verify if we have the numbers really sorted. We do, and we'll go to the code. First, we have to make the code or macro to start with range A2. So we type in range double quotes A2 double quotes close parentheses dot and select, and macro on this line selects the range. Why do we need to do this? You'll find out as we go along. Okay, I will outend these lines of the code for you, so you will see basically all of it. Well, not all of it, but because this is too long, but anyways, I will move when we need. Okay, so right now we are finding out the last row in column H, where we have put the unique values, and the last row in that column is row 15. Just check it, we see it's 15. Okay, and now we utilize for next loop, as I said. Then we'll utilize the offset function, and then in the middle, to count how many times the ID appears in column A, we utilize nested loop, do while. Why nested? Because this loop is utilized as a part of this for next loop. It means is nested inside of this loop. So as the code goes along, X gets the value 2, and it takes the value from column 8, cell 2, and it does further operations with it. So value is now this one. Now we have to count how many times this value appears in the column A, and for this we're gonna utilize do while loop. This is sort of similar to do until loop, as I have shown in the previous video and also at the beginning of this one, but the difference between do until and do while is the following. Do until loops and executes the lines in between until the certain condition is true. So going a little bit back, until. So this loop starts with y y equals to 1, and goes along until the y equals 10. But this loop, do while, it loops only if at that present moment the condition here is true. So it means it will loop while the value of an active cell will be equal to the unique invoice value. If we use do until here and the unique invoice value do until the active cell equals the unique invoice value, then the loop wouldn't execute. I will show you what it would do. Okay, so until, and this loop basically does whatever is specified until the condition specified is true. So right now active cell is equal to this value, and for this loop it means to stop. So if I execute this line, it will skip, it won't do these operations in between, and we don't need that. We just need to count until this active cell value equals this value. Sorry, while, not until. I'll get confused myself. So putting it back to while. So again, while active cell value is equals to this, do this. Yeah. So right now the loop will execute the lines before this condition is true. Because this condition is true. So going farther down, then we utilized variable code called counter to count how many times the value appears there. So counter right now is empty, and if this line is executed, it will be empty plus 1, which is 1. And counter is now 1. This next one moves the active cell using the offset function 1 row below the current active cell and selects it. So right now the active cell is cell A3, and loop evaluates the condition. So is active cell equal to our unique value? No, it's not. So loop doesn't continue and skips to the next line of the code, which will be this if statement. So, and we have two conditions here. First, we evaluate if the invoice number appears in the code just once or more than once. Yeah. So right now counter equals to 1 because the value appears there just once, and these lines will be executed, these ones. Okay, so the first line gets the value from the net sales column and put this into this variable, and in order to achieve that we need to move the active cell 1 row above the current active cell. Yeah, in memory, not moving it really, but in memory of Excel, because right now, since we executed this line, active cell has changed from this one to this one, and we need to get the net sales costs from this column. So we use, just as we have used in here, negative number of the counter. So the offset will actually move counter rows up, and then 4 columns to the right and gets the net sales value. So execute the line of this code, and the net sales values is surely 25.78. Right now the next line does the same stuff but with costs value, so it again moves whatever rows above the counter variable holds. Right now it's -1, and moves 5 columns to the right, so into the cost column. So going farther down, costs are 13.66, as you can see in this cell. And then this line just subtracts those values to get a profit value. So execute this one. We get 12.12, and this one just puts the profit value into the profit column. So for you to see the whole line of code, first one got the net sales, moving 1 row up, 4 columns to the right. Second one got the costs, moving again 1 row up, 5 columns to the right. This has subtracted the values, and this will now populate the value of profit variable 1 row up to the active cell and 6 columns to the right equals profit. So you can see that profit has been put into this cell. Okay, going farther in the code, we have skipped this second line else if statement because counter equals to 1 and these operations were done. So right now we need to null the counter, so next time another X is utilized, then the counter will start counting again, and not from 1 but from 0. So let's null it to 0 and go on next X. Next X value is this one. This loop again checks, is the active cell value equals to this one, and if it is, and while it is, do these operations. So the condition is now true because active value is this one, unique value is the same. So going down, counter has been zeroed down here, so is now 0. If the line executes, it becomes 1, and the code moves the active cell 1 row below, and again checks the condition. Is the value of active cell equal to this variable? Yes, it is, so it counts again. Yeah, counter was 1, now it's 2. Again, this line will move the active cell 1 row below, and again evaluates the condition. Is it true? Yes, it still is. Yeah, so it goes farther down, and counter is 2. Now it's 3, and row gets moved down again. Now the loop evaluates the condition again. Is the value of active cell equal to this one? No, it's not. And loop does the operation while it is equal. So if it's not equal, then again it goes out of the loop, skips those 2 lines here, and goes on to another line, evaluate the condition. So what value is the counter now? Counter is 3, so this doesn't equal to 1. So these lines of code will be skipped, and this condition will be evaluated. So I run it, and now it checks another condition. Is the counter greater than 1? Yes, it is. So we go on counting the net sales, costs, profits, and populating the profit for this range. And since this is now the range, not just a single row, because this invoice value appears here 3 times, so we now have the range to count. So we can't just use active cell offset. We have to use range. So just enlarge it so you can see. Active cell is this one. And we now need to calculate the range above the active cell. So net sales, we are calculating the way that we're going to use application worksheet function statement and the function sum. I haven't shown this to you in previous videos, but basically you can use application, so control space to finish the word, a dot, and you can use worksheet functions in the VBA. So down arrow, tab, and if you press dot, you are presented with the functions that you know from the sheet when you're entering it into the cell. So let's say I want to use VLOOKUP function, or I want to use min function to find out the minimum value, or I want to use sum function, or some if function, some ifs, products, and so on. So you can use application worksheet functions, which you are using normally in the worksheet, trying to calculate something or do some other manipulation. Yeah, you can use it in VBA as well by typing the following statement. So this is what is used here. Yeah, application worksheet function sum, because we need to sum the range of cells. And what is the range? The range goes from active cell, again minus the counter variable, 4 columns to the right to get to net sales column. This is the first cell where the range will start. So the macro knows that the starting position of this range will be in -3 cells above current active cell, which will be this one. So this is the first this one, but in column net sales. So this is the first cell of the range that we need to sum. And now we need to say that sum all the range from here to here. So the next cell will not be offsetted up by the whole counter, but just by 1, because we know that current active cell is 1 cell below our range. So the next parameter will offset it just by 1. And if I run this row now, net sales was 2578 from the previous invoice, and if I run it now, it will sum the whole range. So F8, and the sum of whole range is 659.35. Okay, so now it has to sum exactly the same way it has to sum the costs. So again, minus the counter for the first position of the range of the first cell, then -1 for the last cell of the range, and move it 5 columns to the right so you get to the cost column. So cost is now the calculated range from F3 to F5, and that is 347.22. Here it gets subtracted, so the profit will now be 304, and we'll put it in the first row of that range in column profit. So we do it again the way by utilizing value minus counter. So the offset will go 3 rows above, 1, 2, 3, 6 columns to the right, and it populates it with profit value. So sure enough, there's the value. And as the code progresses, then counter gets nulled again, and another unique invoice is evaluated. So I will now run it all the way through, and you can see that the procedure has ended, and here we have the values of the invoices. You can check it yourself, it basically works. So here for 447 we have a net sales equaling to 1,732. So just use the sum function here in the sheet to see sum, and we want to sum whatever range belongs to 447 invoice. So this is the range in here, and we get the value of the net sales for that invoice. Same way we evaluate by dragging this formula 1 row to the right. Then it now, by pressing F2, you can see that it now sums the costs, for 447, so from F19 to F23. And here we can subtract the values, so equals this cell minus, sorry, wrong keyboard, minus this cell. And we can see that the values which have been put there by macro is the same. You can copy the formula anywhere you want, including this subtraction, of course. Okay, sorry, this just, you can't copy it. It takes the previous range, and the current one is now smaller. So to see the actual result, you have to adjust the formula like this one as well, so it would just really count the numbers for 446 only, and you can now see that the subtraction is the same as it was created by the macro, so it basically works. So at the end of this really long video, I will show you that it can work on whatever long database you have. So here in this second sheet I have how many columns? Sorry, rows. Control down arrow, and I have 10,000 rows here. So I'm gonna reuse the code that I just created. I'm gonna put here the profit column. So profit, and again I will extract the unique values out of this first column. We'll copy it to the column H. First select the range, Control Shift down arrow, press enter, and select the range to copy the value to, the unique values, sorry, in here, press enter, and we now see that we have the unique values from this really big database. Yeah, so these are unique, and we want to do the same trick as we have done before. So all we really need to do is just run the code again on this active sheet. So go back to the code. Right now I will run it all the way through. So you will see that it works also on even bigger database. So click here and click execute. It will take a little bit longer because it goes down to 10,000 rows. So bear with me. At the end of the video I will show you how to disable this application screen updating so it wouldn't take so much time. But we are already halfway through, so this wouldn't be so bad. Okay, so the procedure has finished, and you can see that it had calculated basically all the database. So let's do the check again. Sum of 699. 699 is there 3 times, so it would be this one. Then we move it to the costs and we subtract. So this minus this equals this. Yeah, so it works on even bigger database. See, all the columns got populated. Sorry, all the respective rows got populated. Okay, so I will now show you how to disable this screen updating, so the macro wouldn't take that long to process this very large database. So I will delete this. I swear this will be the last part of this really long video, but I think you find it worth it. So we'll delete this check again as well. And before we execute the code, we use another row of code at the beginning, and this one is application. Oh, sorry, this really is a long video, bear with me just a few, maybe 1 minute. So screen, and we now type, after application we type dot and we find screen updating. We press tab and we set this property to have a parameter false. So, and we do this again at the end of the code. But this time we'll set it to have a parameter true. Why? So when we run the code, the first line executed will be this one, and the Excel knows that from between here and here don't show the interim results of the operations that you are doing. As you were seeing previously on the screen, it was flashing each time the line of code was executed, but we don't need that. We just need to see the final result. So we do that by putting this one on the top with the parameter false, and as the last line of the code, the same one on the bottom with the parameter true. So once this all gets true and this one is executed, it will just display the final result. So just run it again. It will still take some time because it's really a big database, but it will be quicker than before. Yeah, it's done. So it wasn't showing us the interim results each time the line was executed, but instead it's shown us just the overall result. Okay, so this has been